We were sitting in a circle with a bunch of other students, and out of nowhere, he stands up, he takes his pants off, and he starts to hold his private parts.
It's a hard knock life, folks, and it's Sue Lim, your host, here today to talk about the things you want to talk about, but we never talk about. So I have a guest, Sharanya. How are you? Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I had you come on the show today because you have a very, I find, in my opinion, a very fascinating career. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your career.
Okay, so I am the director and founder of Hush the Theatre. We're an inclusive theatre space. We work with all marginalized communities, the disabled community as well, neurodivergent. And basically, I'm also a teacher, so I teach drama, and I use drama therapy with neurodivergent and neurotypical kids. So our classes are all inclusive. We have 50-50 of neurodivergent, neurotypical. So that is the proper term as of 2024 in regards to, because we're quite used to using special needs, that term, which is, that we've been using it for a long time. But now the right term to refer to them is neurodivergent. So the neurodivergent community consists of those with ADHD, autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, everything. And the neurotypical community represent those with typically developed brains.
Okay.
So we have the divergent brains, the diverse brains, and the typically typical brains.
Okay,
yes. So it's a different way of thinking, a different way of using your brain.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yes.
And how long have you been in this industry for?
Quite a long time. I started teaching when I was just fresh out of university, from 21. So now I'm 34. So that would be 12. 12 years.
I want to say kudos.
Thank you.
I mean, I was myself a teacher for autistic kids, and I can tell you right now the amount of patience that I've learned to build and the love I have for these kids was another level, and you must be another level too. Tell me about your experiences and how your challenges with this business and job.
It's funny, actually. A lot of people regard me, because of the job that I do, regard me as someone who's very patient. But I'm also the kind who can get so frustrated that I can't open a jar, for example. So
Get you.
it varies. The patience level varies, but with my kids, it's always there. I've been working with children with special needs for quite a long time, but then the reason for that was because I realized there was a need for it in Malaysia. I guess where it all started, maybe I can tell you a short story and how this started. I studied drama in the University of Exeter in England, and when I did, they offered a module called Applied Drama, and it was using theatre with marginalized groups. So one of the groups that I was presented with was a group of autistic children. At this moment, I had never had an experience with someone who had autism. I didn't know what autism was. I only knew the very vague, they don't give you eye contact. Very simple facts that were...
textbook.
Yes, the textbook, that were thrown around.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all I knew about it. And I went into this project not knowing anything and not necessarily researching anything as well. And when I started this class with this group of autistic kids, my first idea was, okay, you know what? We're going to hide the kids because they have autism. They're not going to feel comfortable being in front of an audience. So again, that's just my, this is what people say, so it must be true. Let's hide them. So my idea was to do a puppet show. So to hide them with a puppet screen and get them to just use their hands and do this show. So in the end, the audience came. We had the show. And as I was about to walk out to kind of give a final speech, one of my autistic students, he's about 7 years old, he heard the audience clapping. And he actually burst through the puppet stage. He broke it in half. It was made of, just paper. He broke it in half. He ran in front of the audience, and he was like, yay! And everybody was clapping. And he started
so
bowing and bowing,
Aww.
and he just soaked up all that energy and all those claps from the audience. And that is when I told myself, I was like, you don't know anything about it. You have we need to get those preconceived notions about what autism is, what Down syndrome is, out of our heads. So even something as simple as, Down syndrome people are really happy all the time. That's not true. They go through all the emotions that everybody does. For example, like when I teach my other kids, I'll say those with Down syndrome they go through all the emotions. They can be happy and sad, and just because they look happy doesn't mean you can say whatever you want to them or be rude or, So
they're humans.
They're humans, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and going through that experience, what made you take the next step to go, okay, this is what, I love doing this. I want to carry on.
I think it was that idea that I didn't know anything about it. And the needing to get that knowledge, understand them better, because that's when I learned actually nobody has researched or put in the effort to understand what autism really is, because we're all just playing on these preconceived notions that other people tell us. Oh, they have bad eye contact, or they don't, it shows a lack of awareness, I guess. And that was kind of the push. And I thought, hey, I think this is something that is missing in Malaysia, and I think we need to
you're
push
giving
this.
awareness, right?
Yes.
But wait, okay, so we're trying to give awareness to the parents and to people around us, but what about the kids themselves? How do they know, and how, if they know, how do you tell them, or how do you to approach them that they're a special needs child?
Okay, so in terms of Hush the Theatre, when we do inclusive classes, the best way is open communication. Open communication. I have this thing about, in current times, everybody is afraid to say certain things because, it might be offensive or it might be wrong. And I think that kind of stops people from asking questions. And I think being curious and asking questions needs to be kept alive. I feel like it's...
So you don't consider it rude that somebody's asking...
if they don't know, if the knowledge isn't present, and they're asking, hey, how do I refer to you? For example, someone in a wheelchair, do I call you disabled? Is that something, a term that you are comfortable with? So it's also opening that question, what can I refer to you as? What are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with orang kurang upaya, for instance, Some people don't like that term, orang kurang upaya, because it means the less fortunate.
Right.
But some people do. Some people find strength in the term OKU. So it's always important to ask someone, how do you like to be referred?
Okay, I was about to say, how do you even know?
Yeah.
So now, but again, regarding the student themselves, how do you let them know that they are special needs? Do you treat them any different? Do you tell them, hey, you're different, so therefore, I'm sure some people cannot help but to stare, for example. How do you have the child, understand that, how do you help the child deal with something like this, for example?
I realized I went on a bit of a tangent earlier, so I'm going to answer this question very directly.
Okay.
How you can help is by explaining, for example, to a child. Let's say you have a neurotypical child and a neurodivergent one, both in the same space. What I like to do is, I like to say, we're all different, right? How do you think we're different? And children are very intuitive. So, you get answers like, oh, teacher, I'm tall, or teacher, I'm short, teacher, I wear glasses, teacher, I don't wear glasses. So I think it's very important to show them that being different is okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Being
think
different
there's,
is okay.
yes.
And I think even regardless, we tell our kids this all the time. I grew up in myself and my children grow up in a very different multicultural environment, and so we are always told being different is okay. It's actually, there's nothing wrong with it. And they're okay. Yeah. So and as yourself, like, what advice do you give to parents, for example? I mean, parents, I want to say, probably have the most challenging role here, is that they don't know. What do you tell parents to say to their kids, or how?
There are a few things. You are wonderful for who you are. I feel like that, implying that every day to a child that is neurodivergent is so important. There's this activity that I used to do with my students, where I would tell them 5 things that I love about them every day.
Every day?
Without fail. All 12 of them.
Okay.
I would go through, each one.
Okay.
One by one. I would sit them in my office and I would tell them 5 things that I really love about them. All my answers are always honest. If they did something funny that day, I would bring that up and I would say, you made me laugh so much. It was, such a great moment. And I never lie. I never lie to my students, but I do give them 5 things that I love about them every single day. So I think it's also that identifying what those things are throughout the day.
Right.
It's also coming up with a list like, oh, this, and it makes me a better person by doing that, noticing lovely things about the people around me.
Yeah.
So it helps me, it helps them. So I think
it's a daily, it's actually a good habit in general, whether you're doing it with your children, your friend, your partner.
Yes.
I have to ask a very curious question. If you're asking you're telling them the things that you love about them, do you do the opposite?
Actually, I haven't. That's a good question. I haven't. Some of them also, I don't like this term, I really don't, but they haven't come up with a better term for it. But some students of mine are nonverbal. So a lot of them show love back to me, I guess, by holding my hand or, so I take those things as things they love about me, I presume. Yeah.
Right. They're nonverbal. So you, going back to the question of if the things that they can improve on, for example, do you tell them little things like this, like that you could do this better? Yeah,
for sure.
Very honest.
Yes, very honest.
Okay.
I've had a student before have a meltdown. He has autism. He's 6 foot and he's huge, muscular, and he was sitting opposite me, and he kept getting the answer to something wrong. And I didn't say, oh, this is wrong. And I didn't say any of that, but he was getting frustrated with himself.
Okay.
And because of that, he actually stood up, he flipped my office table to the side. He threw my laptop, so my laptop broke in half. I had a coffee mug as well. I still remember that coffee mug. Coffee went flying everywhere in my office. And he grabbed my neck and pushed me against the wall. And I really, in that moment, I thought this is it. Oh my gosh.
How old was he again?
He's, now he would be 27. So back then, maybe 20, 21.
All right. So he basically had a bit of a
A
tantrum.
meltdown.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So we don't use the word tantrum. So there's also that language.
Okay.
There's also.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Fair.
Because this is all stuff I had to had to learn over the years, and it's so.
This is a good thing to teach audience too.
Maybe I can go into that then a little bit. The difference between a meltdown and a tantrum. A tantrum is when a child looks at you to see your response because they're trying to get your attention. So if I go throw my water bottle to the side and go, I don't want it. And normally children will look to you to see your response because they want that attention back.
Interesting.
But for a child who has autism, who is having a meltdown, they don't care about your response because they can't control it.
Okay.
Yes, they can't
and
control.
they will just continue. So how How did you deal with that situation, by the way?
This situation, so he had his hand around my neck, I remember, and I just looked him straight in the eye. I guess in moments like that, you have to be a little bit fearless. Looked him straight in the eye, and I was in a very calm tone. I said, take your hand off and sit down. And from then on, actually, because I was quite stern as well with him, and I said, if there's something wrong, sit. And sorry, my teacher voice is coming out now. It's two
okay,
very different voices.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's just like when I'm a Pilates instructor.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just a normal friend. Yeah. Okay. And then?
And so I'm very stern. I was very stern. I made him sit down. Of course, I have to give him water. The next thing you do is check their heart rate to see if it slows down.
So you told him in a very stern manner, sit down.
Yes.
And he sat down.
Sit down. And then he listened. And this was 7-8 years ago. So today, I am the only teacher that he listens to. So there's even a video that I kept where he had a meltdown. And you have to stand over them sometimes. You got to put your... it's very hard to explain this, but if they're sitting down, you put your knees over to lock them in position, stand like you're in control, you're the one in control, and that they do listen to you. But in moments like that, it is very difficult because how do I say this? It could be very dangerous. Because they don't know.
Also, he's 6 foot.
Yes, 6 foot, muscular.
Know? Yeah. How do you know?
How do you know? Exactly.
But also, like, so that incident happened, you told, obviously, the parents about it.
Yes.
Usually, how do parents react?
With his parents in particular, it's not a lot of shock, I guess, because it does occur at home.
It does occur.
It does.
It does.
It does occur at home. They themselves know how to handle meltdowns.
And they're okay with you being more stern on them.
Yes, of course. They're very okay with that. But I make sure that I tell their parents. Of course, I don't touch them. I don't lay a hand on my kids ever. I use voice, just my voice only. And I also show a lot of love and affection. So I am stern when I need to be stern, but I'm also very affectionate and kind with you, and I say the right things, and I compliment you when you did something right. And I think they need that kind of balance, because those children or adults with special needs, those who are neurodivergent, tend to not have they have one or the other. They're either over coddled or they are totally ignored.
Right.
It's one or the other. This is just how it is. Or they're yelled at and slapped, and there's no balance.
There is times where I recently shared my experience with you that some parents deny the fact that there's something wrong with their child, or their special needs child, because they just refuse, whether they're trying to pretend everything's okay or whatnot. And how does that affect the child and the people around them when they are in denial?
It's very difficult if you're in denial when they are at a very young age, because that is the time they need the most help. So any parent, I suppose, being in denial when the child is very young is not going to be helpful for them when they become older. So I guess it's just being okay. I guess it needs a little bit more awareness, because there's this very negative feeling when someone says, I have autism or I have Down syndrome, and they automatically disregard it, or they're not a part of society anymore. And I think that scares parents.
Yeah. And little do they know that, if anything, I mean, I've met some insanely smart autistic kids. Yes. Insanely smart. I mean, they're so out of this world. Like they're, I know that some kids, like, they're not, it's not a negative thing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Has there been an incident where, that you had to, I think you shared one incident with me with a child that pulled his pants down?
Yep.
Can you share that?
I can. Before I share that, actually, you just brought me to quite a cool point. Okay. it's with autism in particular, because I know we're talking about the whole neurodivergent community, but with autism in particular, it goes either way. So there are those that play the piano very well and that do this very well. So an audience would look at that and go, whoa, autism is really cool, or this child with autism can play the piano, do this activity really well. I had a student once who memorized every military equipment in the world and vehicle and drew all of them and labeled all of them correctly. So there is that aspect, but there are those also who don't have those talents. So it's very common for public to go, autism means you will be shunned from society. That's one view of it. And the other view is the whole big extreme, is they're so magnificent and smart and they play the piano and they play this beautifully. No one is talking about the middle between those two.
And
I think there is a middle.
Okay.
There absolutely is a middle. And I think there's also this pressure that parents feel when their child is autistic, and they sort of put them on a pedestal a little bit, which I think can be unfair to people when you do that. But put them on a pedestal and force them to play the piano and play it really well. And
But do you think it's a parent's way to, like, a defense mechanism?
Yeah.
To be like, yeah, my child's autistic, but and then I know some parents that actually like bring their kids, they overwhelm them with a lot of activities like swimming and running and physical activities to make up for the fact that they're autistic. Do you think it's a good or bad thing? Like,
I feel like you said it yourself. I feel like it's to make up for the fact that they're autistic, right? I think that in itself is the error. It's seeing it as one whole thing rather than a separate, this is what you have and therefore we need to correct. It's looking at it as if you need to correct a mistake, but that is not what you need to do. We're not trying to correct a mistake. That is who you are. That is a part of you. And all it is you learn differently. That is all it is. It's your brain is developed differently.
Right.
So you actually said it yourself. That's a great point.
I just wanted to make sure. But let's go back to the story. I was very fascinated.
Sorry again.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry.
You actually recently told me that you found out something about yourself recently. What was that about?
That is, I have ADHD.
There you go.
Diagnosed with it, and that is why, sorry everybody, this is me looking at the camera, like, sorry, I'm going around in circles, but that is the reason.
Nowadays, I want to say it's a very common term that is thrown around. Sometimes I do wonder if I have it, because I'm like, okay, sometimes I'm very forgetful. My husband's always like, okay, you forgot something again. You forgot to put this in the fridge. You forgot to put that back. You open a can of something and then you kind of just leave it and walk away and do something else. How did you find out that you were,
I had very difficult, I would call them, I think it's something more serious, but it was mood swings, I guess. That's the best way to describe it. A lot of very high highs and a lot of very low lows. And the low lows were very bad, to the point where I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't get out of bed for 5 days, was affecting my job, everything. And I knew something was wrong. Actually, for my whole life, I knew something was not quite right. Yes.
Really? That is very interesting.
For sure. And for a long time, I always felt I don't fit in anywhere. And also, I something is off. Not necessarily something is wrong, but something is definitely off. It took me 34 years to go to a therapist and figure it out. And I did get a diagnosis in the end. And that's when I was like, oh my God, it makes sense.
So you're actually happy.
Yes.
You weren't like sad, disappointed,
No.
or upset with yourself.
No.
Yeah.
I
Answered more questions.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And everything makes sense now. So when it makes sense, it makes my life a lot easier. So I can understand, hey, this is because of the ADHD. So, okay, now you can take a step back. Whereas before this, because I didn't know what it was, I just kind of flip out, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, a reason why we keep, you know, returning back to the story with the boy.
Yes, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
I've been so, you know, since the beginning of the episode, I've been like, okay, what is this story? What is this story? Because I told her not to tell me because I wanted it to be a surprise, you know? And I've been the whole time, I'm like, okay, tell me the story.
Okay, now, can we do it now? Okay. Okay, so what happened was a student of mine, he's 16, so he's at that age developing, you know, and we were sitting in a circle with a bunch of other students. And out of nowhere, he stands up, he takes his pants off, and he starts to hold his private parts. And move his hand up and down. Am I allowed to?
Yeah, you say that.
Yes. Okay.
Because these are stories. These are true. You know, these are, Go ahead.
So he was doing that in front of the other kids. And so
how many kids were there?
Like 8 or 9, standing in a circle. And so I actually, in that moment, I thought, hang on, I can't say the wrong thing. I knew I needed to say something, but I also knew I can't say the wrong thing. So
what's the wrong thing?
Exactly. So we'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
And I immediately pulled him into the bathroom and I closed the door. I said, just for now, can you put your pants back up and let's, you know, talk for a moment. And I told him that what he was doing is not wrong. And I think that's important. What you are doing is wrong because it's in public.
Okay.
You're doing this action in public. And I think that's really important because because doing that is normal human behavior. We have to be very careful not to go, that's totally wrong. Put it back, you know, zip over your pants. Don't do that ever again. Because the moment you do that, you don't teach them, they're going to find that it's a natural part of human life.
Okay.
And if I had said the wrong thing and if I had scolded him for doing what he did, I believe that would have made him a lot more aggressive. And I think, you know, a lot more aggressive and a lot...
Do you think it's because he would have felt embarrassed?
Yes.
So he's like angry that you made him feel embarrassed, kind of?
That's right. And the only thing I was trying to get across was that it's wrong to do it in public.
Okay.
If this is something you need to do it in private.
And did he understand that?
He did. He did understand. He responded to it. And he responded very well because in the past, not in the past, but if I had handled that differently, I think, you know, a number of things could have happened. He could have gone back out and done it again. He could have, I feel they tend to push back when you say, don't do that, because they're so used to that. They're so used to everyone around them going, don't do that, put it back, don't touch this, don't do that. And there's so much of don't. So you become
So you have to be careful with the way you phrase things, basically.
Exactly.
Right? And not like immediately react to their, you know, don't do this, don't. The word don't is sensitive.
Yes, that's right. A little bit.
And I'm just curious, how did the other students react? Were they responsive, like, you know?
Yeah, actually,
did you talk to them about it after? Okay.
That's a good question. So I did, once I sent him home first, because I felt I didn't want to pull him back into class after that incident. So I sent him home and I spoke to the students and I explained that this is a very natural part of life. Everybody does it. Everybody comes of age. I used, after that lesson actually, we used pictures and all of that to teach them. So it kind of actually moves on to a very sensitive topic that is not spoken about in Malaysia. It's sex education for children and for adults with special needs.
Okay.
Non-existent in Malaysia. I'm sure it's extremely taboo. No one wants to talk about it.
Definitely.
And it is very prominent in the US, in the UK. They actually teach them the right ways and things like that. And I think it's important to do that here, not because of anything else. I know a lot of people are going to scrutinize me for saying this, but not for anything else except for the fact that they know that their body is their own. That's it. Mm-hmm. And they know not to get in situations where someone can come and touch them and they can't respond back. So it prevents a lot of abusive situations. They know right touch from wrong touch. They know,
They know the ownership of their body.
Yes. And it will lower the abuse count that is happening right now in Malaysia. I mean, it's awful.
Because I just actually recently learned that the vulnerable ones get taken advantage of completely. And I mean, in my eyes, I mean, obviously, it's hard for me to believe this, because it's like, oh, why, But okay. And then continue. Sorry.
I've seen this before happen right in front of my eyes when one boy with autism, he is such a lovely student. He was happily jumping. He was jumping because he was happy. So he was jumping up and down and up and down. And the teacher in that room, which wasn't me, I was watching the class, the teacher in that room didn't like that behavior and actually pushed him against the wall and hurt him. Okay. Pushed him against the wall to stop him from jumping and hurt him. And that, why? What is the reason for that? You had no right to do that. You have absolutely, you have to explain to the parent why you pushed their child against a wall. I don't understand that. So I feel like
that if it was a quote unquote normal child, what would they do? They would just be like, hey, don't do that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And I never thought of it that way at all. Yeah.
And I think they get pushed around and bullied a lot because no one teaches them how to fight back. No one is showing them that, hey, actually you can say no, I feel like that there's a lot of internal bullying as well that goes on in terms of not giving them the choice of what to eat, for example, or there's so many instances. Actually, I'm having a hard time trying to pick one, but not giving them choices in general. So you have to sit here. You have to stand there. You need to, they're asking you to sit down. And their life is just constant instructions by other people because there's no, it's not taught to them how to say yes or no, for example. They're just taught to listen. They're taught to listen,
they're
and
taught
that's
what
it.
to do.
Yes.
They're not given choices.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing is that even though they're special needs, they're still humans.
Yep.
And you still have to treat them like, I think what tends to happen is with children with special needs, they not just children, but even adults, they're always treated like children. They're not spoken to in a normal manner. They're always spoken to as if they're always 5 or 2 years old. Yeah.
Actually, you would know this teaching autistic kids, but even I don't know if you've ever encountered this, but when parents talk about the child in front of them, so I get this a lot. I can't tell you how many times I get this, but hey, my boy, don't talk. He doesn't talk. Why? Why like this? Why like this? In front of the child, and I think that's it can be very damaging to the child that is hearing this and is unable to fight back
right.
and to say, actually, I do understand what you're saying. It's just that I don't have the ability to respond right now
and
to you.
And it hurts their confidence too, as if, So that happens. That happens a lot, actually. Yeah. And we forget, again, forgetting that they're humans.
Yep.
That they can talk, they can make their own choices, they can do their own thing. Yeah.
But I think it's important to note also that it's not the parents' fault that these things occur. They
have to be educated too.
They have to be educated too.
So
it's not their fault.
Do you have workshops or anything?
For parents, not yet, but I'm happy to open
I think that's
open
great
one.
Because I think not just the parents, but family members also don't know how to treat this situation as well. They think also, oh, I have to be different. I have to be like this and like this. When in fact, what I'm hearing is just treat it like a normal situation. You don't have to be any different about it.
Be curious.
Yeah.
Be curious. The best thing you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One last thing is, what insights or lessons have you gained that you wish that you could actually tell parents about this, about the kids, to understand about, you know, how to raise them and how to work with them?
There's quite a broad, there's a lot of answers for this, I guess.
Give me one thing that's on top of your mind.
Top of my mind is send them to inclusive spaces, and ask spaces. Always ask, are you inclusive? Are you inclusive? Go to the cinema and ask them, is your space inclusive? Keep questioning them, because the more you question them, the more embarrassed they'll get, and the more they're going to make their spaces inclusive.
Wow, that's a good point. So, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah. Keep questioning them, because why, you know, should your place, why doesn't your place have a lift?
Right.
Is your theatre only for those that are able to walk up the stairs?
Right.
Why, you know, question people all the time, question spaces, question society. Is your space inclusive? Think about that. Think about your home. Is your home inclusive?
Such a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. And one last thing, can you tell me a little bit more about your space?
Sure.
Tell you know, the audience and the followers and the viewers where it is at, and, you know, a little bit of, you know, advertising here.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I would like to know, because I think a lot of times people don't know where to go.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Yep. I think that's a good point. I feel in Malaysia it's very separate, the two. I feel, you know, we have spaces for those who are neurodivergent. We do, but they're not inclusive. They're only for children who are neurodivergent. And then we have schools where we only have them for those who are neurotypical. And MOE actually stated that Malaysia would be inclusive by 2024. So we're in 2024 and we're nowhere near that, unfortunately. So I think maybe I'll give a little bit of background about what Hush does. I guess it's a really good space to send your children, those who are neurodivergent, and more importantly, for those who are neurotypical. The reason I say that is I believe this type of education, this talk, any research done on neurodivergence should be pointed towards parents with neurotypical children. And the reason for that is they need to be educated about autism, Down syndrome, and all of that, more so than our special needs community.
I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
I 1000%
I think,
agree.
Yeah. And I think it's so important. Those are the people we need to educate, and those are the people we need to reach out to, because parents of children with special needs, those who are neurodivergent, already know they are raising a child with special needs. So a lot of the information that we're sharing today, they already know that. So I hope this reaches the other audience.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's not one size fits all, because sometimes like we're like, oh, my kid's autistic, let me Google it.
Yeah.
And it's not just, you know, it's just, whatever's on Google is just facts and theoretical. Every child is different, and you have to treat them differently, right? But the same at the same time.
Yeah, I totally understand it.
Okay, well, I'm going to thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you for sharing your experiences, especially.
Thank you.
It's a hard knock life, guys, and I really hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.